long ago and it happened far away. The moral of the story has been lost until today. Although we shouldn't let the past complicate the now, we wrap a stack of artifacts that help us show us how. Whatnot hopes and soggy dreams become who I am today. I'm feeling more alive in more important ways. Lost all ability to think for myself. I put it on the table, then you help yourself. Oh, wow, oh, wow. This place stinks of corruption. Shots fired confirm my assumption. Everyone is evil in their own special way. This advice I'm giving you today.
Welcome, everybody. Good to be with you today. What I want to start to do with you today, that's better. What I want to start to do with you today is take a bird's eye view of the history of the classical period so that we can take what we've learned already, the literature we've already studied, Homer, and all of the topics that you're exploring in your individual and in your group research. So vase painting and the career of Alexander the Great and Greek drama, specifically Aristophanes. And then what else are we doing? Augustus Caesar and Roman architecture and the Aeneid, so that you can put these things in sort of a context and understand the world in which these events took place, or in which these works of art or works of literature were created. So let's start doing that now. We'll do this once or twice a week till we make it all the way through. Though most of your class time for the rest of the year is going to be dedicated to the Cambridge project. But we'll meet and have discussions like this once or twice a week to help build that context. When we talk about the classical period, I usually say from around 600 BC to, and I cut it off sharp. I usually cut it off sharp at 476 AD. That's the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Eastern half of the Roman Empire, by the way, survived another 1,000 years. Just didn't include Rome anymore. And historians will call that the Byzantine Empire because its capital, Constantinople, is a town that used to be known as Byzantium. And it lasted until 1453, almost till the time of Columbus. There was a Roman emperor sitting on the throne. But the western half of the empire falls in 476, and I usually cut off the classical period right there, although that's a little false. All of it's a little artificial. Big changes came to the world overnight, but then it takes years for those changes to really manifest. So we're going to call the classical period now, we're going to say 600 BC to 600 AD. He's not here. Would you open the door and tell her that he's not here? From 600 BC to 600 AD, so that we can give the fall of Rome a little opportunity to really screw things up in society. And 600 AD, 125 years after the fall of Rome, that's a time you don't want to be alive. That's one of the worst. If you're in Western Europe, it's about the worst time you could possibly ever exist. But today we're going to go back before this. We've been before this. Trojan War happens around 1250 BC. The thing is, somebody living in 600 BC has more in common with someone living 1200 BC, 600 years earlier, than he or she would have with someone living in 800 BC, 200 years earlier. Why? Well, we'll talk a little bit more about it in this lesson, but at the time of the Trojan War, you have highly advanced civilizations all in this area, the Mediterranean area, And then they collapse. They all collapse except for Egypt. We'll talk about that when we may not get, I think we will get that far today. If not, we'll get that far next time. And we have a period known as the Dark Age. The Dark Ages for Greece and a pretty dark age for just about everybody else. So that when we start what we call the classical period, we're kind of just now getting back to where we were 600 years earlier, just recovering and finally moving forward. The same thing happens, most of us have had world history already, right? The same thing happens with the end of the Middle Ages and the emergence of the Renaissance closer to our own time. What the Renaissance does is it kind of gets us back where we left off before Rome fell. And then we pick up and move forward. Fall of Rome, among other things, and if you take my humanities class, I'll tell you who I blame for this. It's Plato, or the ghost of Plato. But the fall of Rome sets back Western civilization, and to a lesser extent, all human civilizations, 1,000 years. Think about the future 1,000 years from now, what you expect to see. Flying cars and robot maids, and I don't know, we've colonized the sun or whatever. We'd be there. We'd be there if it not for that, the pesky barbarians taking down Rome and the ghost of mean old Plato. If you want to know what Plato has to do with that, my seniors especially just failed to graduate and come take my humanities class next year. Jade, you are in my humanities class now, so you do not have to do that. You will get the hidden truth behind all of civilization and why it's all Plato's fault. She is allowed to graduate. She is allowed to graduate. All right, so this classical period is a period where formal states are expanding, becoming more complex in their organization, and larger in the amount of territory that they control. This is an age of empires, and it's not the first but the second age of empires, because its launch is getting back to where civilization had been before the Bronze Age collapse, which we'll talk about here in a moment. In the imperial model, you definitely see this in the way Rome operates. You definitely see this before Rome in the way the Hellenistic kingdoms operate, the way Alexander would have operated had he actually lived long enough to rule his empire. And then you saw it previously before the Bronze Age collapse in the great civilizations and empires of Egypt and Assyria and Babylon and all those earlier, is a central leadership is imposing unity on an area where previously there had been competing states. The term I like to use for it is megastate. If we look at the Roman Empire, which is really starts becoming imperial, say 150 BC. If we look at the Roman Empire, at its peak, you've got places as diverse and as distant as Syria and Spain, England and Egypt, Israel and Italy. See what I'm doing with the letters? Everything I'm pointing out starts with the same letter because I'm such a fantastic communicator. Yeah, go me. Other places and other places, that both starts with an O. United in it's not a single culture, but it's a single mega state ruled by a central emperor and a common law. And so that's a big feature of this period. It's a big tent movement. Now, not everybody gets to sit at the big kids' table inside that tent. I may get kind of wistful and romantic about some elements of the Roman Empire, but I'll tell you right now, I wouldn't want to live there, neither do you. But yeah, so this is what marks this period. Consolidation of power and expanding to incorporate diverse peoples into a single megastate. What challenges do you think that might present? Yeah, Gracie says people of different cultures bickering about which one is right. And normally when that, Gracie, come up here for a minute. Do the microphone dance. Lift it up, twirl, set it back down. I need a microphone dance song.
Sit in the chair.
Yeah, no, that's what the chair's there for. No, I was going to put my feet up.
I feel like a guest star on a TV show.
Well, I've sort of designed it that way. My dream when I was in 8th grade and freshman year of high school, I wanted to be the next David Letterman. You don't even know David Letterman anymore? Yeah. In fact, I wanted to be the one who succeeded him when he retired. That's what I wanted to do. So this remote learning, though it's started by a deadly virus, I got to sort of fulfill my dream. So
you got to live your dream.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're going to scoot a little closer, though, because the microphone will not pick you up. So, Gracie, imagine we're living in any of these imperial states.
Okay.
All right. So you have identified one of the challenges of forming a society that way is that within the society, if Leah, just sort of wave so that they can see you. Just kind of stick your hand forward. There she is. Yeah. So Leah here's from culture A and you're from culture B, 1,000 miles away, but you're both ruled by me, the emperor, in the middle. Gracie said, well, the two cultures might bicker with each other because they see things differently. They won't agree over who's right. How are disagreements like that usually settled? You know how to do the microphone dance? Yeah. How are disagreements usually settled like that? A calm, ooh, what? War, yeah. It was that way in the sort of the first age of empires where we go to war over things, at least legendarily, as petty as one adulterous wife. And it's going to be just the same in this second age of empires, in this classical age. This could be a period marked by either peace, but it's the peace that comes because I have my boot on your throat, and Augustus does that. Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, he declares something called the Pax Romana. He takes credit for bringing the world to peace, at least his world, and he kind of did with a boot on the throat of the world. Yeah, you're at peace because you're afraid that I'm so much stronger than you. Leah, I'm so much stronger than you and bigger than you and smarter than you and better than you that you're afraid to step up to me because, I just crush you. That's how Augustus, not me. Or, barring that, there's war. Usually the only thing that holds you back from going to war is fear. If you think you've got a shot to take them, you go for it. Excellent. Okay, thank you. You can stay or go. It's up to you.
I will do the little microphone dance once again.
All right, microphone dance.
There you go.
Thank you. The new situation where you have a much larger territory controlled by a single state with multiple people with different traditions, often speaking different languages within a single state, that necessitates the development of new technologies, of new techniques, of new way of administering a government. Ruling Davenport, Florida, is different than ruling Florida, which is different than ruling the United States, which is different than ruling the Earth, which is different than ruling the Milky Way. Yes, one day it will all be mine. I only want to be the ruler of the universe, of just the universe, that's all. No, multiverse. All right. Each of those, the complexity.
Mr. Childers, a cooler version, you would get the multiverse. You're not even close.
Matthew Makovich just suggested I'm not cool enough to rule the universe.
There's a better version of you. That's the only way you're not gonna. You're Terminator, Childers.
Can you believe this? Well, I tell you what, there's not a worse version of you, because that would violate the law of non-contradiction. What was I saying? So each of those scenarios is an order of magnitude more complex than the scenario that came before it in the list, and so requires creative thinking and new, more formal structures for administering an empire. which means no sooner do I become emperor, master of all. If I'm emperor of the galaxy, have total power in the galaxy, the very next thing I have to do is either lose the galaxy because I couldn't handle how complex it was. Jalicia, what do you need? You need? No, right now. No. Because she's in class. We're doing. Don't get.
Thank you.
So the first thing I do is either lose control of the galaxy or have to share my power, right? I have to, just like I'm losing control of this galaxy completely. I've got people sleeping, I got people leaving, I got people invading like Jalicia over there.
I already disowned you 2 years ago, so.
I think you need to crush your enemies.
Oh.
I could spend the whole rest of my life trying to figure out what that meant and that not be successful. So I have to share my power. I have to empower underlings to help me administer the empire. Does that make sense? All right. So now I've got people with more and less power. People have haves and have-nots. What can you predict is going to happen like that in a society where, because I can't share it with everybody, then I'm not emperor anymore. Then we're a democracy. What's the point of that? All right, I can't crush Pascali's phone in a democracy. But once I do that, once I share my power with some but not others, what happens?
Huh?
You lose that power.
I'm so scared of Mr. Childers. I'm putting my phone away.
I might lose the power at the end. Let's not go quite that far. So I treat Liam special. I treat Aiden special. I treat Matthew Munoz special. And the rest of you,
We're treated like
the rest of you are just the regular old turds, that treatment that everybody gets. How do you start feeling about each other? Okay, jealous. And Gracie says stabby. Somebody said hatred, but yeah, jealousy. It foments jealousy. Why? Hey, no fair. Why does he get? You know? Yeah. Why don't I get in on this? Yeah. And I'd like to imagine that running an empire is different from running a classroom, and of course it is in its details, but the constituent ingredients of an empire and a classroom are the same thing. People, just people. And you think people are any more mature when they get older than teenagers are? Well, and maybe in some regards, but teenagers almost never started wars. So, Ooh, there's Augustus. We're not ready to really talk about him, but there he is waving at us with his boot on our throats. Techniques included, so the techniques for administering a larger state, a mega state, as I call it, included the creation of centralized governments, bureaucracies, elaborate legal systems. So we see codes of law. Again, those emerged in the earlier age, things like Hammurabi's code you've studied, the legal texts that are preserved in the Hebrew Bible, Babylonian codes. But when the classical age starts and civilization sort of re-kicks, then you get more and more samples of formal legal codes, especially coming out of Greece and Rome. Imperial governments promote trade and projected military power over larger areas. The goal of building a strong military, a strong enough military to make others afraid of you, is, unless you happen to be in the mood for conquest, in a sort of strange, almost perverse sense, the goal of building a strong military is to prevent war. The goal of a strong military is peace. It's something that in my childhood, I grew up in the tail end of the Cold War. My humanities students, we've talked about that when we were introducing Sophie's World. In my childhood, has anyone heard the term mutually assured destruction?
I feel
like I have. But...
Yeah, Leah, come sit in the chair.
Oh, shit. I'm
Get
good.
up.
No,
Get up.
I'm good.
If I have to get up and point the camera at you, I'm going to be very angry, and I'm going to be meaner to you. Take the mic. Microphone, Dan.
I don't like this.
There's Leah here. Leah, what is mutually assured destruction?
Sir, I don't know. I just said I heard of it before.
Okay, so you remember what the Cold War was? Hmm?
And then the fact that they split their own country in half, and then you had like the Berlin Wall after, and like the aftermath of everything.
Sure.
So like both sides, you're battling, both to get like defeated in your own
Sure.
mutual shame.
Sure. And we probably couldn't hear Alex on the video, but Alex was outlining sort of the lose-lose nature of a conflict. Like, we haven't named the parties, the United States and the Soviet Union. The decades where the United States and the Soviet Union were at each other's throats. Something new in the world in that conflict that previous conflicts didn't have, and that's nuclear weapons. Weapons which we have enough nuclear weapons to destroy the earth many times over, to kill every man, woman, and child on the earth. And so the prospect of a nuclear war actually erupting between the United States and the Soviet Union would be unthinkable horror. Unthinkable horror. And so the best we could come up with to prevent it was a policy that was literally called mutually assured destruction. Both sides, the Soviet Union and the United States, stockpile so many nuclear weapons by design, this is the policy and its name, that we know, well, the Soviet Union is never going to attack us directly because they know we will annihilate them. And we won't attack them because we know they will annihilate us. The name was new, and the possibility of actually annihilating each other is new in the nuclear age. But mutually assured destruction is as old as human weapons. So that's the thought behind building these mighty military powers. What do the Achaeans gain from taking Troy down? Oh, so the gold of Troy and the women of Troy, Zoe, and a woman. Yeah. If we scratch a surface underneath the myth, if there's, and it's really not known what the truth is. But yes, Alex, come up so we can hear you. Yeah. Do microphone dance.
Goodness.
And then I'll have. No, because you're on this side of the microphone. Then we'll have Zoe come up too, because you had your hand up a second ago, right? You had your hand up a second ago, right? Oh, you already answered. A woman. Alex, have a seat.
Okay.
What about, I'm Agamemnon, all right? Leader of the Mycenaeans, leader of the Achaeans. What do I gain from taking down Troy?
I mean, he wanted the land. Like, he just wanted the power of saying, like, what was the land that the full on, it was like, I can't pronounce it. But it's like, I can spell it. If I spell it out, would you like say it?
Yes.
It was like Aenan or Aegan.
The Aegean.
That.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
he wants to fool everything.
All right. So he wants to be seen as a big boy. All right. As a master in this territory. And so by whooping Troy, he projects, because Greece is itty bitty. All right. Greece is itty bitty. And at the time of the Trojan War, they're just becoming a real player in the area, dominated by much larger and older players like the Hittites and the Egyptians. Whooping Troy, other than the gold, other than the women and the spices, what whooping Troy would give, I don't want to say whooping beating Troy sends a message to the rest of the world that, hey, I'm in the game now. We're in the game. Don't mess with us.
And then, like, I watched the movie last night, and I was like, oh, wow. because he was basically saying like, oh, Greece was nothing before I built it up and like became this power, and then he just, it's like a pride thing, like saying, oh, I'm gonna display like, oh, I'm the biggest and the baddest because we just took down the Trojans,
Sure.
and then he's gonna send a message like, oh, you don't want to mess with us because we just beat them, and it was like a pride thing for him. And like his brother was just fighting because he wanted his wife back, but he ended up dying. So
See, now it's a lot like prison, according to movies. I've never been to prison. No comment on whether I've ever been to jail, but I've never been to prison. But what are you supposed to do your first day in prison? Punch a bigger guy, right? Find the biggest guy and you punch him, right? To show that you're not to be messed with. Well, that's what building military power does, and what trade does. Trade makes it less likely that you have to use that military power. Ideally, again, unless you're actively conquering, ideally, your military is full of excellent trained fighters who never have to fight. Are any of you considering joining the military? I have students who are. Put your phone away, Raphael. What's the matter with you? I have. What's that?
I was looking at the Marines.
Oh, you're looking at the Marines. Does that sort of describe what you, if you were to choose to be a Marine, what you'd like to be? A highly trained, skilled fighter who never has to fight? Isn't that?
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't hate it because who really wants to go to war?
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, you gotta fight.
If you got to, you got to.
Yeah.
But A, letting them know how tough you are, and B, having them need you and you need them. That's what trade does.
That's like Achilles, he was like the main person in like his team of people. They were basically like the SEALs of the whole thing.
Sure.
And then whenever they came on the battlefield, it was like, oh crap, like it's Achilles, and no one really want to fight him because it's like you're fighting the greatest warrior ever.
Absolutely.
And
that reputation was often enough to stop anyone from messing with them. That's how every one of these empires is working. They're trying to project a reputation of power and brutality so that they don't actually have to fight. Now, they often do have to fight. Gracie, come on, so we can hear you. Thank you, Alex. I'm sure we'll have you up here again soon, Alex. Microphone dance.
Just gonna do that instead.
She just tunneled up from the basement. Miss Gracie, what do you want to say?
Okay, I wanted to add on the part that you were saying about the trade, when you need them and they need you, so that way y'all can't fight. If you have one area that's producing all the food and then another area that's producing all the weapons, if y'all go to war, the one that's producing the food won't have any weapons to actually fight with, and the one that's producing all the weapons, sure, they could kill everybody, but they're not going to get any food afterwards.
Right.
So you end up in this situation where you rely on each other, meaning that you can't attack each other.
Sure. Unless I can learn to eat weapons or fight with food.
Yep.
Fight with food. Maybe they're growing pineapples.
Yep.
If you look at the this is real education. If you get yourself a can of Publix brand crushed pineapple, which I got yesterday by mistake. I wanted sliced pineapple, but I got crushed by mistake. On the label, there is a half a pineapple, with the skin, the rind on it, all right? And then the crushed pineapple is piled on top of it. So like the pineapple is serving as a bowl for the crushed pineapple, and it said serving suggestion. And I thought, wait, so you would suggest that I slice open a fresh pineapple, hollow it out, dispose of the fresh pineapple, flush that down the toilet, open up your can of canned chopped pineapple and dump it into the corpse. That's right.
Of the good fresh pineapple.
That's right. Corpse of the good fresh pineapple. So, where are we? It's school, right? Oh, okay. Let's learn stuff then. Yes. So what you have now is governments issuing currencies so that when I'm I don't know why I can't speak. When I'm embarking in trade, and trade is essential to keeping the peace and to giving me all the stuff that I need, but keeping the peace. It's if I'm making money off of you, why would I kill you? All right. Why would I kill you, Gracie?
I was gonna add something else, but
Please do. Please do.
it also gives a common ground. So when you're trading, you can't like bicker the price of something to make it unfair. You have your common amount that everybody agrees on
Sure.
is roughly the value
Sure.
of something, instead of like just being like, this loaf of bread is 5 cows today.
Sure. Sure. And so that's the benefit it has over earlier bartering systems, and that we can with standardized currency, standardized weight and measurement, and agreed on value. The faith of a government behind the currency. The downside is, ever since the adoption of currency, what are those stupid things people are trading it out? NFTs, where it's just ownership over pictures that have no actual value.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: as vital as money has become to our society ever since this time period, so for 3,000 years, as much as we stress over money, as much as we make our life choices based on money, it's what was NFT? All money is an NFT. It has no inherent value. Why is gold valuable? Because it's shiny. Give me you can't eat it. 4 cows the old way? You give me that, I'll give you 4 cows. 4 cows have value. I can eat one and ride one and get the milk from the other one, and then, I don't know, hollow one out and sleep in it, or hollow one out and fill it with crushed pineapple. That's got value. Money has no value, except we have all agreed to imagine that it does. Why? Because it's shiny. Matthew, come on up. Voices up. I was really trading down here. Man, folks at home, throw by Gracie. Yeah, let's see Matthew. Matthew wants to say a fact.
So I have to say my
You sit in the, I don't want to put the chair. You know, did anybody ask Matthew what he wants? Ever?
You want to drink?
Go for it, Matthew Magovich.
I was just gonna say it's even more accurate now though with money being valueless, because although like gold technically isn't super valuable, other than it looks nice, but also it's hard to get. Like you can't find gold like you can find cows. You can just breed more cows and get cows, so
Sure.
you can reduce the value.
Sure.
But gold itself is limited. Whereas now modern day money is like it's not even connected to anything physical. I think in like 2017 or something like that, it's just nothing.
Yeah, it's all just
Paper.
Yeah, it's paper, and now it's not even paper anymore. It's a digital wisp. All right, thank you, Matthew Magovich. Matthew Magovich.
That real quick, it's very interesting looking at society, because in sociology last year we discussed that how money doesn't actually have inherent value, it's just the value we give it. And yeah, I think it's interesting with all societies that you look at, seeing what really has value and what they just say has value because they say it has value.
Sure.
That's just a little tangent.
Oh no, I appreciate it. So what do these governments have to do is not only share power with administrators, but share the one thing that a government is supposed to have monopoly on, and that's the use of violence. It's in fact one of the things that justifies the existence of a government. Why would I do what other people who aren't even related to me tell me? Well, put your phone away, Raphael. Why would I do what other people who aren't even related to me tell me? Because, well, at least they keep me safe. And they do that by by exercising a monopoly over violence. That's the same to this day. Right? The only people who are allowed to kill you work for the government. To defend a bigger and bigger and bigger territory and empire, I've got to increase the number of people who I hand weapons to and say, you get to kill. And I've got to do that. I've got to be careful that you don't turn around and then say, okay, first what I'm going to kill is you, right? Which happens a lot. And the challenge is, go back to the beginning where Gracie said that there are tension between the different ethnic groups in a large megastate empire that historically don't get along. And I got to give some of them weapons too, right? My father killed your grandfather and took your uncle's land and made your mother a slave, but now I need you to pick up a sword and fight for me. Maybe you will. Maybe you will. Maybe you'll turn that sword right back around on mean old Emperor me. The city at the center would be the center of trade, public performance of religious rituals, and political administration for states and for empires. The capital, and capital comes from a word that just means the head, and the capital city of an empire plays the same role that your head plays in your body. So it's the way your head's, oh, maybe he wants me to play on my phone now. He didn't 2 minutes ago. The capital of an empire, well, maybe he wants us to not pay our taxes. And then you try, and the emperor puts his boot on your throat the way I put my boot on Raphael's throat. And so that's the role the imperial city plays. Imperial social structures displayed hierarchies. So this is not an age where equality between persons was even a dream in anyone's head. It was pretty much presumed in any of these ancient classical societies that some people's lives and beings mattered more than others. Some people were inherently of more value. We had a brief conversation in the first couple of weeks. We talked about the role of race in the ancient world, and race is more of a modern construct, and racism more of a modern phenomenon than it is ancient. So that's not race isn't what's driving the segregation between classes here. But if you're in the lower class, if you're enslaved, or if you're in perpetually impoverished and oppressed class, I don't think it feels any better to know that, well, they didn't enslave me because of my race, they enslaved me because of any number of other reasons. But that's, they weren't racist. They were all sorts of other stuff-ist, though. Empires used various methods to maintain food production, including slavery and corvée labor, which is unpaid labor in lieu of taxation. So you don't have the money to pay your taxes. Okay, you'll farm for me, and then you can keep enough to eat, enough to not die, but then you give all the rest to me.
Middle Ages with all the castles and stuff being built.
Sure. Gracie, come back up.
I'm gonna do the microphone dance 20 times today.
Mm-hmm. Microphone dance.
Poor thing is getting so twisted.
You were saying.
Oh, isn't that what was going on in the Middle Ages, I believe, with all the castles and stuff being built, when they were like, you work the land surrounding, and then in a time of need, you all come to the castle and you'll be safe here.
Absolutely. So though it's a different time period, that feudal system that developed in the European Middle Ages is very much an example of this kind of structuring of society. And it's interesting that the feudal system grew out of, Rome was a slave state. The empire collapses and fractures into the sort of tiny little pissant European kingdoms, all trying to be Rome, and not holding a candle to it. But one of the positive things that happens around the same time is there is an abolition of slavery in Europe when Western Europe becomes largely Christian. Slavery is abolished for 1,000 years. Then comes back pretty much as soon as the opportunity arises. As soon as there's, in the high Middle Ages, where everybody's poor anyway, it's not where are you going to get slaves from? Almost as soon as it was possible to go conquer and take slaves again, I guess that wasn't so bad after all, and start the practice back up for the rich people. Yeah. So even though we're in a different time period, it's the same kind of phenomenon. Imperial society has provided rewards for the loyalty of the elites. So I need you, if I'm, go get my Infinity Gauntlet.
Run.
Supreme powerful. He said, "Get me my Infinity."
Get me my Infinity Gauntlet.
Mortal.
Peon, mortal. Bow before me. Most kings and most emperors are not Thanos. Thanos has total power because, at least with the gauntlet, he is omnipotent. He does not need anyone. The Black Order that he's got working for him, that's a carryover from his younger days. He can. This thing doesn't actually. You can't actually snap with this thing. You can do it. I mean, it's omnipotent, but except for the power to snap, he can snap his fingers and make whatever he wishes come to pass. The most powerful ruler in our world, whether it be Augustus Caesar or Agamemnon or Ramses II, the Pharaoh, or Alexander, or friggin' Hitler and Stalin, they don't have actual omnipotence, actual total power, which means no matter how powerful they are, they still need something from you if you are an influencer in society. And normally, and there's not much variation, as different as cultures are. Some things are pretty much the same everywhere, at least in settled civilizations. You're either an influencer because you've got money / land, or you're an influencer because and maybe because it's true, but for whatever reason, you have convinced the people around you that you are the mouthpiece of the gods or whatever spiritual forces are honored in your society. And so it's for that reason that in these empires, I still, even if I'm the emperor, I still need to keep these people happy. At least happy enough for them not to kill me. Think back to the first day of class or second day of class. I just said, let's look at this list on Wikipedia of all the Roman emperors. Just a little chart about all the Roman emperors. And then it said their cause of death. And it was murder, AIDS. No, not AIDS. Murder, hit by bus, murder, jumped off a building, suicide, murder. So it didn't always work. Okay, so that's all we'll talk about for today. We'll do this, have this fun again tomorrow, and then the rest of the week will be given to your Cambridge project. So Gracie, thank you. Leah, thank you. Alex, thank you. Matthew, thank you. Raphael, thank you. You brought me my gauntlet and you provided entertainment throughout the class period as they, laughed at your disgrace. All right, the end.